Thank you for inviting me. I am very honored to be here, and also I am very honored to speak about to remember an African slave and an activist of the 18th century. In fact, my presentation focuses on Lauda Equiano and his autobiography, the interesting narrative of the life of Oluwada Equiano or Gustavus Vassa, the African, written by himself, published in 1789. Equiano was a former slave born in Africa in 1745, who was able to buy his liberty in 1766. At the end of the 1780s, Equiano was a prominent figure of the abolitionist movement. Indeed, it was in that decade that the British and Anglo-American publics began to take interest in the question of the slave trade, and they were particularly keen to hear direct accounts. Equiano's autobiography thus provided a victim's perspective. But the portrait he chose for the frontispiece depicts him as his free self. Sources showed that Equiano retained the right to choose his portrait. He described his plan for the book as containing an elegant frontispiece of the author's portrait. And indeed, watching us from the oval of the elegant etching, we see an English gentleman holding an open Bible. Yet at the same time, it is very clearly the portrait of an African, a black man who is not seeking to invoke compassion in his white readers. The direct gaze and the positioning of his arm present to us an assertive African man, eager to demonstrate his social status and religious piety. As stated in the book's title, he is Olaudah Equiano, the African name given to him at birth, which he used for his public persona. But he is also Gustavus Vassa, the slave name which would maintain throughout his life. He is, moreover, both Equiano the African who wrote his own story and Equiano the well-dressed English gentleman and lay preacher holding an open Bible. This portrait is emblematic of the conscious skill of Equiano's self-representation. The frontispiece thus anticipates the masterful narrative with which he composes his different identities to recount the interesting experiences that made him who he was. And it was thanks to this mastery that Equiano's strategies of self-representation informed, if not determined, the shape of the black narrative before 1865. In this presentation, I will seek to lay out the significance of the Bible we see Equiano confidently holding out to his readers. What is the relation between subjectivity and the Bible in Equiano's writings? In what way are the free self and the scriptures connected in his book? To answer these questions, I will look at a few passages from Equiano's autobiography. The first extract is taken from the third chapter, in which Equiano is a young boy and watches the world of the white man with a mix of marvel and terror. In the preceding chapters, he has recounted his memory of Africa, his capture, his experience of slavery in Africa, and then the horror of the Middle Passage and the arrival in Barbados. In the third chapter, Equano is initially kept on a Virginia plantation, but is then sold to the commander of a trading ship. It is at this point that his assimilation into the world of Europeans begins, and it is here that Equano first encounters some strange objects, that is to say, books. I quote, "And I had often seen my master employed in reading, and I had great curiosity to talk to the books, as I thought I did. For that purpose, I have often taken up a book and have talked to it, and then put my ears to it when alone, in hopes it would answer me. And I have been very much concerned when I found it remain silent." This episode leads to the reader to sympathize with the young and naive protagonist. And in this way, Equano's white readership is offered an African's perspective on their own culture, on Western Britain culture. However, this episode represents not only the encounter between orality and literacy from the point of view of orality. It also reveals that books speak to the master, but remain silent with the slave. Books thus obey the master-slave power relation. But the narrative framework reverses this relation between the silent book and the slave. If the book refused to talk with the slave, now free, portrays the book in written form within his own book. The talking book is a trope in the literature of the slave. Its intertextual recurrence marks the formation of a tradition, and it stands for the paradox of representing the oral within the written, precisely when oral black culture was transforming itself into written culture. The Bible in Equano's portrait therefore symbolizes his journey to freedom and his simultaneous journey from morality to literacy. Indeed, the ultimate aim in this double journey is the affirmation of subjectivity from an object among other objects possessed by the master to the subject who is able to endow the book with his subjectivity. This begs the following questions. At the end of the journey, does the slave become a subject who is entirely identical to his master? Is the Bible only one book among many others in this process of subjectification? The Bible itself is at the center of the second extract I wish to look at. It is 1776, and Equano has been a free man for 10 years. He has traveled the Mediterranean, returned to the West Indies, participated in a dangerous trip to the North Pole. At this point, however, he is in Jamaica, managing a plantation. His relations with the natives are generally good. One evening, however, some of them become aggressive after accepting a generous quantity of room. But Equano is a man of many resources. I therefore thought of a stratagem to appease the riot. I told them I would take the book pointing to the Bible, read and tell God to make them dead, This was something like magic. Here we see a very different Equiano to the scared but curious boy who tried to talk with books. Now the ex-slave is managing a slave plantation and has such a nonchalant attitude towards the Bible that he is able to exploit the natives' naive beliefs that were once his own. He uses the Bible as a magic trick in an hegemonic and colonial manner to tame the native. It would seem that the slave has become like his slave owner and that the Bible plays a key role in this transformation. It is certainly disconcerting for a reader of today to discover almost at the end of the book that the former slave managed a slave plantation. I do not believe, however, that this fact should cause us to see Equiano as a controversial figure. To do so would be to misunderstand the development of the abolitionist debate. Equiano relates his experiences in Jamaica as an illustration to an economic argument in support of the abolitionist cause. That in Jamaica was an experiment intended to demonstrate that a drastically raising slaves' living standards increased productivity. Such arguments were very much in line with the abolitionist movement, which had made a strategic decision to focus on pragmatic and gradualist arguments. The abolition of the slave trade was meant as a first step that would compel a slave owner to treat their slaves better if the supply was stopped, and raise the slave standards of living to the point where they would be competitors with free labor. So emancipation would follow by evolution. Above all, to consider Equiano a controversial figure means misunderstanding the central role of the slave economy in the 18th century as a constitutive element in the expansion of global capitalism. The Atlantic slave trade underpinned the global economy. Slavery was not something you could ideologically adhere to or dissent from, but rather a key structural element of the global order. This becomes very clear when we look at the arguments made by apologists for slavery at that time. For instance, Gordon Turnbull, in his Apology for the Negro Slavery, writes, "Negro slavery appears to be, as far as reason can judge, one of those indispensable and necessary links in the great chain of causes and events which cannot be broken, or, in other words, a part of the stupendous, admirable, and perfect whole." Equiano's narrative was intended precisely as a demonstration that the order founded on slavery was anything but stupendous, admirable, and perfect. And yet slavery was an integral part of the world in which both Turnbull and Equiano were born. And as such, it shaped their cultural horizon. It shaped what was possible, imaginable, thinkable. In other words, the future as a cultural fact. Equiano had entered into the relations of power that sustained slavery through a process of violent desocialization, which reduced him to a status of a commodity. Yet within these relations, he also was resocialized. I quote, I could now speak English tolerably well, and I perfectly understood everything that was said. I no longer looked upon the European as spirits, but as men superior to us, and therefore I had the stronger desire to resemble to them, to imbibe their spirit, and imitate their manners. I had long wished to be able to read and write, and for this reason I took any opportunity to gain instruction. Equano thus began his journey to attain subjectivity within master-slave, white, black, Africa the West, and rurality-literacy relations. It is within the framework of these relations that he was able to rediscover his ability to aspire and desire. And what he desired was assimilation, to imbibe the spirit of the Europeans, to become like them. This process of subjectification takes place not only by means of language and literacy, but also by means of the passage from magic to religion, as symbolized by the spirit opposition. What we might take from this is that Equano has realized his ambition. In his portrait, he is a self-made man who has brought back his own liberty with the fruits of his labor, and he has also become similar to his Anglican English master. Yet, the capacity to aspire is a meta-capacity. It contains not only the possibility that the aspirations of the subject reflect the social order imposed on the subject, but also the possibility to imagine an alternative to the existing conditions. As such, the man who watches us from the frontispiece is Equano, the African who has written his autobiography, the best testament to his subjectivity. In this way, he subverts the fiction of the natural order of things and carries out the act that Turnbull tried to avoid by breaking the great chain of causes and events. Equano uses his master books not as a way of becoming him, but as tool against him. The same is true for the Bible he holds out to his readers. The interesting narrative is, for example, punctuated with ironic inversions. The cruel slave owners are referred to as good Christians or gentlemen. The European spirit which he has assimilated is thus the measure of his ironical judgment of the Europeans. Equano's use of the Bible was even more radical when he came to his writings in newspapers. In a 1788 article against a pro-slave writer, he wrote, "Recollect, sir, that you are told in the 17th verse of Leviticus, you shall not suffer sin upon your neighbor, and you will not, I am sure, escape the upbraiding of your conscience, unless you are fortunate enough to have none. And remember also that oppressor and the oppressed are in the hands of God, who says, 'Vengeance is mine, and I will repay.'" Equano had previously tried to speak to his master's book. Later, he had threatened natives to speak to the Bible. Now Equano cites the Bible to rebuke and curse his adversaries. He is then exercising religious authority over his former master. Equiano's authority does not, for the most part, derive from what he finds written in the Bible. If Equiano had learned anything from publicly debating his opponents, it was that the Bible did not provide an unequivocal condemnation of slavery. Indeed, it provided as much ammunition to the pro-slave writers as it did to the abolitionists. The key to understanding this use of the scriptures lies in Act 4:12, which we see in the Bible of the frontispiece. Neither is there salvation in any other, but only Christ Jesus. Reflecting on this verse, in 1774, Equiano had experienced his spiritual rebirth, following a profound religious crisis. Anxious to save his soul, Equiano went through a conversion which also transformed the meaning of the Bible from law to promise. Adyan understood then that he was justified by faith. The gospel is about a divine call and a human response, as the reformers had taught. So eventually Adyan found a Tolkien book. I quote, "Whenever I looked in the Bible, I saw things new, for I knew that to me was the word of salvation sent, promises that were so powerfully applied to me." In recounting his conversion, Adyan's autobiography follows the 18th century model of evangelical conversion narrative. The Reformers' teachings took an anthropocentric turn in his English literature inspired by the evangelical revival of the 18th century. It is a narrative centered around the writer's individual experience of conversion as a defining moment of his identity. In our case, the writer is at the end of an unusual spiritual and cultural journey, from morality to literacy, from slavery to deliverance. I quote, "Scriptures became an unsealed book. I prized it much, with many thanks to God that I could read the Bible for myself." It is a story of the obtaining of subjectivity. Equiano thus was able to gain his identity by translating the significance of his African name into 18th century written Christian culture. Olauda Equiano means one favored and having a loud voice. He is favored because he was justified by faith, and he has provided the master's book with his loud voice. And after that, the book that he holds in his portrait will never be the same again.